Hello and welcome everybody to our new episode of Let's Talk About It. Today we have an episode of Let's Talk About It on discrimination at work and bridging differences and perceived divide. And I'm really, really happy to have as our guest today Rahaf with me to talk about these issues. And I think it's going to be an amazing conversation for us to have. The idea of launching Let's Talk About It was to have generous conversations on the challenges of creating more equitable workplaces that are built on belonging. So I think thinking about discrimination at work and what discrimination means and how we can maybe create better systems to deal with discrimination and hopefully a working world where discrimination doesn't have a place is something that is so much at the core of creating belonging. So I'm really happy to have a chance to have that conversation together today. To give you a little bit of background, Rahaf and I met on LinkedIn, I think a little while ago. She contacted me to be part of her podcast, D.O.P.E Talk, which is a pop-up podcast centered on the topics of diversity, open-mindedness, peace, and equality. And we've been in contact since, and I deeply admire the work that you have been doing and shining a light on different situations of peace, equality, and diversity around the globe. And when I read the account that you wrote on how you experienced discrimination as a woman of color in the German public sector, I thought it was such a thoughtful and such an important piece. And an experience that deserves so much attention and spotlight. So I really wanted to make sure that we have a chance to have this conversation together and maybe have it be a moment that can empower others who are facing discrimination at work to know that it's possible to speak about these issues and to speak up, and that it's possible for things to change. So thank you for being here, Rahaf.
Thank you for inviting me.
I would love for you to briefly introduce yourself to our listeners. And since I know when I get asked to introduce myself, I'm always a little bit at a loss in trying to understand how to start and what to spotlight, because to sum up a life within 2 or 3 sentences or minutes is a very big task. So a question that I love as sort of a prompt to introduce yourself is, how would you tell your 10-year-old self about who you are and what you do today?
That's a really nice idea. Yeah, that's going to be 12 years to sum up for her. I'm going to be talking to a little girl in Amman in Jordan. Oh, she's going to be really mind blown. I'm going to tell her that I speak both English and German now, and that I can understand the lyrics to all the songs that I used to hear back in the days, and that I'm living abroad now, and that I'm doing that without my family. They allowed me to do that. I'm out, and I'm living in a place called Berlin, and she probably have no idea what Berlin is. So I'm going to tell her that Berlin is a big, big, big city in Europe, which is, she never even thought about. And that Berlin is so different in so many ways from Amman, but also from the rest of the world. That in Berlin, mostly no one cares what you're wearing, how you look like, what color your skin is, and what kind of hair you have, if it's like wool or fuzzy or not, and that you are living on your own and very independent, and you're just experiencing one new thing after the other, which is something I never ever thought about when I was 10 years old. Oh, I don't know if that's relevant for the listeners, but I think it will be a very exciting conversation with my 10 years old self.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful. And in a lot of ways, I feel like, we can talk about what we work on or sort of introduce our educational background and things like that. But the human behind that, I mean, that's at the core of everything, right? It's the human behind that is experiencing work, that is experiencing the education. So to me, it's probably even more relevant than where you went to school or what titles you have. So thank you for introducing yourself. I recently learned what has become one of my favorite questions in the world from a great question asker, Krista Tippett. Her invitation, or the question that I learned from her, is, what gives you hope? And I thought that might be a great question to start with. So I want to ask you today, what gives you hope right now?
Do you mean hope in general for the world or hope for my life? Because I have a lot of hope for many things.
That's amazing. Whichever one of those you want to pick right now, what resonates most with you?
The first thing that popped to my mind was the last thing that made me a bit hopeful about humanity, which is 2 Israeli teenagers refusing to enlist in the military service.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them refusing it for the 3rd time in his life, which led to him spending 53 years in military prison. And yeah, he's still doing it. And his friend is doing it for the first time. And a couple of people from their community accompanied them with motivation and love and support to show that, yeah, it's their right to choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
Not to train to kill or fight with someone.
Yeah. Beautiful example. Okay. So taking that feeling of hope with us into this conversation, I wonder if we're thinking about this topic of discrimination at work and feeling or experiencing discrimination in general. If I look at your story and you writing that story, and when I shared that story with other people in my network or in our network, one of the reactions that I received a lot was sort of a reaction of surprise, of gratitude, and also of awe of the courage or the bravery that it requires to actually speak openly about these things, which I think goes to show that it is considered something that needs courage to speak about, right? That it's not usual to speak about your experience of discrimination openly still in 2021, which in and of itself is kind of amazing, right? But maybe staying for a moment with that place of hope and of courage, I wonder what helps you or helped you to feel empowered to speak up about your experiences, knowing that others hesitate to do so.
I actually thought about this while I had the time to reflect on what happens, after a big event in life. And I think it's not only one thing that empowers me to talk about, whether it's about discrimination at work or any other kind of discrimination. It's the feeling of being safe to talk about something, like that it's safe for me, that whoever I'm talking to and whoever is around me, the reaction will not be, unsafe or causing me to lose something one way or the other. And another thing that, let's say, maybe not empowers me, but motivates me to talk is knowing that in the situation, I wished somebody was talking about it, but no one was talking about it. And then I had to collect the courage to talk about it. And I'm hoping that with that, as you said, that those who are in my shoes as I was before feel more empowered to do something, or at least to talk about it, to take action, to be motivated, to not feel alone. This really gives me a drive, because after talking about it, the storm is not done. The storm is still going on in your life and in your mental health and in your psychology. Talking about it is scary because it's not only talking, it's actually the first step of taking action. And it always has consequences. I know that. I learned that the hard way, and I know that others are going through this now, and I'm hoping one way or the other they will be empowered and motivated.
Yeah, I hope so too. In your article, you share that you entered this workplace from a place of great purpose and positivity, right? I'm going to quote you here. Many motivated colleagues who went into this field of work to help people and do a job with purpose suffer from being stigmatized and stereotyped as racist and heartless, stupid, lazy, and slow. I remember really struggling with those stereotypes myself, stereotypes that I have always wanted to prove wrong. I was so committed to cleaning the reputation of a profession I considered honorable and rewarding. And when I was reading that, what really struck me was that I think when you're socialized in Germany from a young age, you don't really, well, I'm going to speak for myself. So looking at the Federal Employment Agency in Germany, I don't think growing up I considered that an honorable and rewarding sort of job to have or an honorable place of work, which probably is problematic in and of itself, right? And I think you describe so much positivity and so much of a sense of already knowing in a way that stereotypes might be attached to this, but coming from a place of, I'm here to prove this wrong and I'm here to actually be a positive force in this space, which would have been an amazing thing to have for any employer, right? I wonder how you experience your entering into the workplace with the sense of purpose, with the sense of positivity, and then being faced with something just so completely different from what you maybe thought you would be doing or would be facing.
I think it helped me to see the federal agency as positive as I saw it, is that I didn't grow up here and I actually didn't know the stereotypes. It had a clean slate with me, let's say. So I didn't see how the German community and society sees it. I just saw the facts on the ground. And the facts for me were, as a woman from a country that doesn't have any social system whatsoever other than empathy between people, and the poor has only that to rely on. I just saw how the law can help you not hit extreme rock bottom. You know, how this society managed to make it one of the columns in the law to take care of your own, which I loved. Yeah. And that's why I was going into it with these thoughts that it's just honorable. It's great. It's such an amazing trust of the society and of us all together who are working and paying a part of the monthly income to contribute to this. It's an honor to put this responsibility in my hand, to be able to use this power given to me by law and by the German society to help others get up and be on their feet, not fall completely, not hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how I saw it. And I see it until now like this. It's in your hands. I like that. There is trust and there is things that you can do. Of course, there are many things that also I discovered need to be improved because this nice idea was developed very long time ago and they are still not, making it better, let's say. Times changed, a lot of things changed, and a lot of things need to be renewed. But still, the idea itself is a really great thing that we need to keep working on. And I really hope that more and more people who see their job as this honor can continue working there. It's needed.
Yeah. 100% it's needed. I almost feel like the federal employment agencies missed out on having you as their PR person speaking about this because I so resonate with what you're saying, right? There is an ideal, there are values behind having this as a federal agency existing in a place in society. It speaks to how we want to be able to help each other to not fall and hit rock bottom, as you say. So I think the question then becomes, how can we keep people like you in places such as the Federal Employment Agency? Or generally speaking, how can we keep people who come with such a sense of purpose and positivity and not have them fall out of the system necessarily because the system includes so many different forms of discrimination? I feel like that's sort of the biggest thing that we need to figure out, that we need to make possible, that it doesn't happen as frequently as it currently does. So just talking a little bit more in detail about your personal experience here. You described that when you relocated to Berlin and started working at a new branch in this agency, the things that you describe about how you were treated sound horrible. I wonder if it would be possible for you to share with us just a little bit about what it was like for you to come to work every day in that situation.
It was heavy, mostly, like the first thing. Um, I gotta mention something before, because as I mentioned also in the article, the last problem that I faced, well, it's just a part of a bigger problem. It's not the bug problem itself. And when you said, how do we keep people who are like me, who like this job in the agency, I had to immediately remember something that my first team lead told me. And he didn't say it as if he is telling me this. He was just pretty much telling me how it goes in the agency. It was us talking about how can I get an open contract, because I had only a limited one and I wanted a long-term one. And, like they don't tell you until the extreme end, and you want to know so that you can apply for other jobs. And he told me, there is no way we can help you get this, because jeder ist ersetzbar in der Agentur, which means everyone is replaceable in the agency. And he wasn't telling me this to tell me you are replaceable. He was just telling me, this is it. This is how our organization thinks. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. That was him giving me an advice. I really had to think about this. So yeah, if your name doesn't even ring a bell, you don't really exist, you're just another number and you can be replaced, then where do we start on solving the problem of not having people who are passionate about their job there?
That is a very good question. Yeah.
But yeah, going back to, I'm sorry for floating away with my thoughts. Going back to your question, going every morning to work, I had Mondays where I cried because my alarm clock rang and I knew that I have to get up and face that monster. It was a roller coaster, not in a nice way. Sometimes roller coasters are nice. Like right now, I am on a roller coaster because I'm in between everything. I'm in limbo and I'm learning new things and trying to, make a new future. And it's a roller coaster, but it's a different one for sure. The other roller coaster was just an emotional one. Sometimes you just try your best. You want the satisfaction and happiness and peace to come from within. So you just focus on yourself, you motivate yourself, you bake something for work, you try to have nice small talks that bring new food, try to organize after work things, do some sports, just lift yourself up so that it's not that bad. But that actually most of the time lasted only one day because it wasn't the solution. The problem was still there because the problem wasn't coming from within me. But that's, where you go to at the beginning. You always try to just swallow it and carry on. So yeah, most of the days were just heavy, as I said. Everything was heavy. My movement was heavy. My heart in my chest in the isban and in the bus were heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. That sentence, the problem wasn't in me, I think is such an important one, right? It rings for me sort of a reminder or a memory of so many different people who tell me or talk to me, or we learn about their experiences of marginalization, of discrimination. And the first thing that happens for so many of us is this sort of internalized sense of something's wrong with me, right? And then you start trying to fix yourself and trying to pile on top of it the burden, and sometimes a feeling of shame or of guilt or definitely of pressure, which just increases these senses of anxiety. And of course, they're unhelpful because you aren't the problem. And you're so right. The problem isn't you. The problem is something else. And in this case, it sounded like there were many different problems that were coming together that created your experience of discrimination, right? So I wonder if I might read another little piece from your article. The bullying continued day in and day out until a person who missed work while on vacation started to resent the train ride to work. I started to become easily anxious and felt like I was constantly walking on thin ice. I tried to meet her harassment. This is talking about the person who was kind of the first point of harassment at your job. First with kindness and respect, but I think this was mistaken for being weak. Then I tried to end the problem with confrontation and demanding respect. I also volunteered to take on another project with extra working hours and no payment to work on the plan for equal opportunities in the organization, hoping to help the organization get on the right way towards understanding why diversity is a positive thing. I talked to her, this person who created the discrimination experience, directly twice about how unacceptable her behavior is. Even some colleagues addressed the problem and tried to talk to her, but none of us was able to make her stop. And I can't even, I'm imagining, and of course this wasn't my lived experience, right? But I'm imagining a situation where you're doing everything. And I mean, it sounds like you're trying to use every single thing that's at your disposal and being really creative about it as well, and being really understanding about it, but being met with barriers every step of the way, right? Can you name some of these barriers? Do you think that there are specific things that you can say, like, these are the sort of the walls that I hit as I was trying to create a better situation for myself?
I can try to, because I can talk for myself. I think I will never be able to know why exactly this person reacted the way she did. What was going on in her mind and how she perceived my confrontation, which wasn't an aggressive confrontation, but just me addressing in person the problem, which I definitely saw in the first time that she was shocked that I did. I think it gave me the impression that she has done this before, but nobody ever had done this before, telling her, you have done this and this and this, and I see this as unacceptable, and it's making me feel like that, and I wish we can work on it because I'd like to continue working with you. I think the biggest barrier, because at the end, whatever was in her mind, the problem existed, and the biggest barrier that she definitely had the same safety that I was talking about that empowers me to talk. I think she had the safety of knowing there are no consequences. Not really. I know definitely that I am not the first person who ran away from this organization because of this particular person. So I think she made already the experience that she's safe and that she can continue doing this, and that this is not, in general, if we look at life, if you normalize things, if you legalize things or make them not seen as a taboo, then they are not a taboo. This is how, unfortunately, the world works. If you look at the biggest problems in the world, the sexism, the sexual harassment. Sometimes you don't hear it in a country because it's actually not considered a crime, you know? The same thing is with discrimination. If you are living in an atmosphere, in a culture that tolerates something, then there's nothing wrong with it. And I think this was the biggest block. That,
And then,
yeah.
Sorry, in this case, what we're talking about is racist comments and racialized discrimination, right, on many different levels towards you.
Yes, like very obvious ones. And not only comments, but also different, how do you say that? This person was in a power place, so she was able to give and take. And she had a team who is supposed to be treated equally. And on many occasions, she proven to give me a special treatment, not in a good way. And it was seen by everybody else. But yeah, there is nothing we can really do about it.
Mm-hmm. So I think you describe a situation with a specific person, and we're talking about a specific person, but there's more, right? And even I think you wrote, the manager is not the problem. She is part of the problem, right? She's part of a bigger problem. And I can hear the reactions in my head from people who might read this or might hear this and say, but this was only one bad apple, right? It's like maybe you were unlucky and you were faced with one bad supervisor whose behavior was clearly racist and discriminatory and unacceptable. But she is just one of many. We know that this is something that very often is the case when we talk about discrimination. People want to make it out as a very isolated incident where there's a specific, just one person who individually is doing something wrong and there is no larger issue. But there is a bigger problem, right? She's part of the bigger problem. Can you explain in your words what you mean by that?
Yeah. As I said, if discrimination is not considered something wrong, then you can continue doing it. So if the place you are spending most of your day at, more than home, especially before Corona time, and especially if you work in the German public sector, because remote work is not considered a thing that you can usually do there. You want to feel safe and you don't want to be harassed with whatever you do. Like if you are eating, if you are working, if you are talking and walking, it's just walking on thin ice. And the biggest problem was that everyone around us and the system and the culture in that organization allowed this, saw this, knew about this, made experience with this, and didn't want to do anything about it. Maybe that doesn't mean that the system itself is discriminating and racist on purpose. Maybe the people who could maybe help me and chose not to aren't someone who does this themselves, who would harass someone and discriminate against someone themselves, but they tolerated it. They think this is not something that need to have any consequences. This is something that we need to just let go. It's not worth it. And again, then there is another level of the problem that is because the organization itself sees everyone as replaceable. And because the system is very old, times are changing, and many immigrants are working in the public sector, and the system still didn't prepare for that, doesn't address that much, at least not in all agencies at the same time. Like my experience in Hamburg was different than my experience in Berlin, etc. So obviously the people make the organization, and if the organization allow it, if the, let's say, general theme of one of their branches is discrimination, then as long as the majority there are like that, why not? You know what I mean? I don't think they do it on purpose, but this is the thing. They are not giving it attention. They don't consider it an issue. And that's why, even if it's only one person, this one person can make a huge impact because a whole system is backing this one person.
Absolutely. And I think this sort of silent majority not doing something is still reproducing the same discriminatory principles and actions, right? Nothing is going to change unless we change it, which means that unless we decide to be part of the solution and find ways of addressing discrimination honestly and openly, things will just continue to be the same way, because that's how structural discrimination works. It's baked into the system, right? It's baked into processes. It sounds like there are many, many different opportunities that you very graciously, also very proactively were offering. You offered to put in free labor to be part of an equal opportunity sort of overhaul, right? You offered the person directly a chance to speak and address things with you. You went and talked to many different people. So many layers of this organization got a very gracious offer of support and help and opportunity to make things better. And they all are missed opportunities in a way, right? So I wonder what you would say were the moments where you thought, this is how something could change. Like, this is the moment where we could do something differently. But then what happened was the opposite. It just continued going in the same direction.
With my conversations with her, I think it was the moment itself, because her, like, every time I addressed it, her reaction wasn't aggressive at all. It was, I thought, understanding, or maybe, okay, denying, but also accepting and offering to change the situation. It was always, oh, I haven't paid attention. I don't do it on purpose. This is my humor. But I will try to to not do that with you. I will try not to joke with you, like making it okay seem like she's actually giving me a privilege of joking like this with me. But I thought this is gonna change because that's what she promised. Whatever, I didn't want her. No need for admitting. Just it's nice enough to acknowledge and accept that I don't want to be treated like this. But after 3 times of talking to her, of course, and the conversation wasn't fruitful. And after starting with this project that you talked about, I went to meetings and I was talking about diversity and inclusion. I was talking about immigration and people of color. I was talking about, like I wanted this project to include everyone, because it was a diversity and inclusion project that is addressing only one minimal problem in discrimination, which is only the right for parents to work part-time and the right for women to be in power positions, but nothing else. And nothing else was allowed to be spoken about. The answer was always immediate. It wasn't even, we can give it time next meeting or something. It was always, oh, we are not made for this. We didn't start the project for this issue. This is another issue. And, the whole bureaucracy of bureaucratizing everything, even the rights for employees to just feel safe at the workplace is something that we need to apply for in some other authority somewhere in Germany that has a whole other process. And when the turn comes, which is probably in 30, 50 years, then it might be on our agenda. So, yeah, again, we go back to a problem in the system and bureaucratizing everything, making everything just a big deal, not being able to change, not accepting change, although they are changing something. Like, you know what I mean? They already knew that I am not a white person when they took me and
Yeah.
accepted me into their organization. They knew that my German is very, very good, but it's not a mother speaker language, that I will sometimes mix the masculine with feminine and vice versa. And that's it's okay, that I am not only that. I am not only someone who speaks not perfect German. That I'm more than that. And that they need to make sure that when they are taking me and people like me into their organization, we have to be treated equally and have the same opportunities and be able to also have a career in that place and not being treated as if we need to stay as low as possible because it's a privilege enough for us to work at that organization, because it's not a privilege to work at a place. It's a like two-way road where I'm giving and taking at the same time. And it's definitely not a privilege if you are treated very badly.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, the rejection came always and immediate. So there wasn't even enough moments of hope, unfortunately.
I think you spoke to some super important themes that are not exclusive to the German public system. One being the fragmentation of efforts around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace, where unfortunately in Germany, we are still in a place where it seems like the projects that get most traction are for cisgendered, heterosexual white women to come into positions of power, and maybe something around sort of family care and little sprinkles of disability advocacy sometimes if you're lucky, or little sprinkles of LGBTQ advocacy if you're lucky, but they're all separated from each other, and they very often are competing with each other, and you're sort of telling everybody else to sort of hold on, stay, like, we know that you are in a shitty situation, we know that we're not treating you equitably, we're admitting that we don't know how to deal with you, but please wait for another 50 to 100 years until we're done with female empowerment, and then we can go to, I don't know, racialized people in the workplace and trying to understand how that fits in. And I think there's something so, like, you're totally right? You're recruiting people and asking people and inviting people into your company, also now with new hiring targets and wanting to show that there is a bigger diversity in the workforce. But if you're not set up to be a place where people actually feel welcome and feel like they want to stay, then A, they're going to leave again, and B, we're losing so much opportunity to be with each other and to really understand what it means to create a place of safety and of belonging for everybody, instead of being siloed, being together as human beings, learning how to work together in a way that is based on mutual respect and mutual sense of belonging, right?
Exactly. There are so opportunities, I think, for at least for the agency where I used to work. They have a lot of potential if they want. There is so much potential within the workforce that they have that could be doing this, who would be happy to do this. Someone like me who would actually do this voluntarily and not getting paid for it, because getting paid for it is a whole other bureaucracy you have to go through. They just need to take the chance. They just need to accept that help.
And it seems ironic to me in so many ways, because as an agency who is serving I mean, such a huge variety of people who are part of German society. Isn't that one of the biggest strengths to have people who come from all walks of life and are able to speak several languages and are able to relate with different experiences of life and of culture? Isn't that exactly what you should want to have if you're interacting in that way?
That's what I thought. I mean, and I had this feeling in when I just started with the agency, when I was working in this special project in Hamburg. And that's why I was also very hopeful and very less skeptical when I moved to Berlin, and my friends in Hamburg were telling me we heard horrible stuff about the situation in Berlin, because yeah, because I was naive, because I didn't know. They knew something that I didn't know. So I was just like going at it like a child. Hmm? And yeah, it did really, that's the thing. The system is very hierarchical. How do you say that?
Hierarchical.
Hierarchical, yeah, thank you. And there are few people who can change a lot. And that's why you just need to, yeah, only the minority who gets their attention gets something changed, let's say, unfortunately. So, this shouldn't be also the situation. We shouldn't be doing PR for our suffering.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, it's not a monopoly on suffering. It just should be, we are in the 2021, as you said. It should be just common sense.
That sentence really hit home for me. We should be doing PR for our suffering. I can feel that in my bones right now. Yeah,
Tiring.
it is, and it shows up as well. If I look at the landscape of diversity, equity, and inclusion work and practitioners, so often the people who are doing this work are marginalized themselves, right? Either inside of organizations, or if you're doing it as a consultant or a trainer outside, it doesn't matter. You are speaking to issues that affect you yourself, and it is tiring, and it's tiring to not sort of be part of the dominant culture and feel like you always have to also educate people on your experience of being human, right? And your right to be treated as a human and to be treated with dignity and respect, which is something we agreed on in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights a long time ago. And somehow, interestingly enough, what it translates to in terms of behavior oftentimes falls short of these big goals of the Declaration of Human Rights, unfortunately. So I wonder, knowing all of this and being with and sitting with all of this, you probably have maybe not a concrete idea, but maybe an inkling, like a sense of what would be your sort of ideal place to work. I think it's really great that you are able to set that boundary for yourself and say, I don't want to be treated like this. I don't deserve to be treated like this anymore, right? So thinking ahead and into the future, having that experience in your body and in your system, is there a sense of what could the ideal place be, knowing we might never get there, but maybe an imagination of what that would be?
Yeah, I actually had I I I had to do Hausaufgabe, let's say like a homework about this, because I am trying to change career and I'm learning coding right now. I'm doing a very intensive boot camp, and they also have a career coaching for us, helping us to figure out what we want. And I had to think about this question: what kind of a workplace do you want? What qualities should the organization have? And so far, I think it's important for me that the culture in that workplace is inclusive, which means everyone who works there knows that whatever their beliefs is, whatever their background is, they are there to be safe, and they need to let people be safe and feel safe too. So that inclusivity is just one of the basics for this culture, that the organization itself sees this as a very important base for working together and being a part of that organization. And it's important for me. My work itself is challenging, interesting, giving me opportunities to be a better person and become an even better employee. But at the same time, no toxicity. Don't make employees turn against themselves. Like, actually, I also experienced in the first 2 years at the Agentur Arbeit, because they politicize the amount of employees they take per year, depending on the amount of unemployment rates and depending on when the elections are coming and who the next government is. And that was actually one of the problems that we faced in the first year. Toxicity and competition, unhealthy, very negative competition between team members, which is also not a good thing to come from the organization to their employees. Other than that, I think I would be up for trying everything. It's just important to just feel safe, to not have this heavy, very bad feeling in my chest every morning.
Absolutely. And maybe like being able to talk about discrimination and seeing things change can be a part of that feeling of safety and not feeling heavy, right? Knowing that maybe things aren't perfect, but there is a willingness for things to be different when people speak up and have the courage to speak up and say, like, hey, this is not working for me.
Definitely. Because we are not perfect, of course. Like, there is space for failure or doing something wrong, but there should be also a space for correcting that, and there should be a space where new problems can be allowed to be discovered and not covered, not put them in a grave until it just gets to the point where it has to explode. And somebody has to leave and another one has to leave and it just escalates. Yeah, definitely. This is something that I definitely missed, a safe space to be able to speak. But I still did it. I spoke, but I mean, at the end, it wasn't fruitful, right?
Yeah. I'm in awe of your tenacity in speaking out in so many different ways and so often, because I think you're right. What you're describing is it's important to speak up, and it takes a lot already to speak up, but then you also need to be listened to and actions need to be taken. Like there are steps after the speaking. I think you said this at the very beginning of our conversation. To speak up is just one part. To become aware is just one part. And the next thing needs to be taking action, right? And that can look different ways in different organizations and for different issues. But if that doesn't happen, then at some point you end up leaving or not speaking anymore. And neither of those are positive things either for the person who has the experience or for the organization. That can't be the goal. Right?
That shouldn't be the goal, yeah. But as long as we are replaceable, it's not even on the agenda, probably.
Yeah.
That's also another thing that I think organizations need to start thinking about. We are the organization. If they keep treating their employees as if they are just another robot that they can replace with another robot, then none of the robots will be happy at that place. And they will either be very bad at what they're doing because they are unhappy, or they will leave. I don't think that's in the interest of anyone. I sound maybe too harsh, but this is the sad truth. And I totally understand that at the beginning, there weren't tools to address, for example, people in migrational background, which is a word I really hate, you know, and other marginalized people, because maybe at some point in time, they didn't exist. Germany became a country of immigration. Whether some people like it or not, that is the fact. And it is the fact that Germany chose to be a migrational country. It's a country of immigration. And you invited the people here, you want them to work here. or you accepted refugees, or. It's just time to then make something that used to work well and isn't anymore better. And it's not really that complicated because there are enough people who want to help and who are willing to help. And the price is not high at all. The price is actually profitable for everyone.
I would even argue that we're paying a price by not doing this work. Like, it's costing us that we're not doing this work, and we're seeing it. I mean, like you were saying, if you treat employees as robots, if you don't treat them as humans, and if you don't see that humans make up the organization and are behind the products that you're creating, are behind the profits that you're creating, right? Then people end up leaving. And that's what we're seeing right now. There's this narrative of the great resignation that's going around in different forms of business media, describing that in Germany, in Europe, in the US, and the UK, so many places across the globe, especially in the globalized North, where we have the privilege of choosing our jobs oftentimes, right? People are saying no. They're saying no to be treated as expendable and replaceable, as you were saying, and they're reevaluating what work means for them and how to align their personal values with the values of the workplace that they're working for. And I think there's also a generational shift happening where people from a younger generation are coming in with different ethics, with different values, and already wanting to see these things in play. At Dr. Mega Consulting, we call it radically human, right? This idea of let's go back, let's be intentional and radical about knowing what it means to be human and just break it down again and again, whatever you're doing, to how can we be most human with each other, and how can we create the biggest, the widest sense of we, of us, of belonging in this kind of human family together, if you will. And I think there are very clear cases emerging where companies who are doing this right, who are putting humans at the center, they are attracting people, they're attracting talent, they're able to be very creative, they're able to address the challenges of our time. And others who are sweeping things under the rug again and again, now especially, are facing sort of a social backlash also towards this, right? Because things are changing. And I would hope that learning from experiences such as yours can be part of that change that's happening, and not another kind of story that just goes under.
I'm afraid that my story went under just like any other story. I don't think many people in my old organization heard about what happened. And I wish that for other people, I hope at some point they will see this, they will see that it's profitable for them to think about those issues and solve them. But yeah, like I really sometimes get speechless and I don't know where to start, because there are really a lot of things that need to be solved, and it's not about me anymore. I'm out of that system. But I see something good in, I see the importance of the existence of this organization. And I really wish many of the problems can be solved. They are solvable, they are not impossible to solve. And even this philosophy of everyone is replaceable is also confusing, because yeah, everybody is replaceable, but not everybody is replaceable, because like they couldn't implement this on a racist person who was working there. This person wasn't replaceable. This person was definitely needed enough to be their worst self, let's say. So even that philosophy is just one of those things they tell you to let go of things. Yeah, the problem goes a bit deeper, and it's just a reformation is needed, I think. And it's starting in other places, it's starting in other companies and organizations, and they are proving that, as you said, it is possible, it is doable, and it is profitable for everyone. let's hope that the reformation is also contagious.
Yes. And it's something that gives me hope is that I have a feeling that we are in a moment of time and in a moment in our society where there is a movement happening that we are a part of in trying to create that change and be that change. So it isn't just, individuals like you were inside of your organizations by yourself having to fight and having to work, but there's a whole movement of people who are also individuals, of course, but who are also coming together and speaking out openly and creating almost a sense of pressure for things to change, right? We're watching. People are watching. People are voting with their feet and who they go to work for and who they don't go to work for. They're making choices what brands to consume, where to pay attention to, who to vote for if they're able to vote, right? So I really believe that we are at a really crucial moment in time. And on my good days, I'm hopeful that being part of this movement means that eventually the pressure will be big enough to create these type of reformations, even within organizations that are maybe a little bit more stagnant and more slow in taking up change than other ones.
I'm hoping so too. And I think, as you said, those people and those movements give me hope. One of the things that give me hope. And I hope that we can be able always to find what we have in common and work together for this, because it's even harder when you stay a minority, when your movement and what you believe in stay a minority and no one is supporting it, and then you stay marginalized. And yeah, this one of the things that are giving me hope is this unity, how people are coming together, how people are finding just how they are finding that it's important to help each other, that it makes them happier and makes them feel safer, and that they can do this together. And there are enough examples to prove that. That is also beautiful.
Absolutely. I think this is a great note, I guess, to end on. But before we do, I would love to weave the thread back to your 10-year-old self in Amman. So thinking back to the 10-year-old you that you introduced to the beginning, I usually ask the question, what would your wise future self of tomorrow recommend the Rahaf of today? And I still love to hear that answer. However, I recently had a guest who said that she felt her 10-year-old self was in some ways actually wiser than she is today. So she shared advice that her 10-year-old self would give herself of today. And I think that's super beautiful. So whichever one of those two you would like to answer the question is either your younger self speaking to today or your future wise self speaking to the Rahaf of today. Is there one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
I think it's going to be my future self talking to my 10 years old self. Believe in yourself, I think. I will tell her to believe in herself. There were much more doubt moments than any belief moment back then. And I think in this case, she needs to know that the power does come from within. She doesn't need external power. It's nice to have, but it's not essential. It can be done only with the power from within.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rahaf, for sharing your story with me and with us. And I invite everybody to go and check out your Dope Talk podcast, which is also, I think, a way of staying in touch with you and your story. And I hope that your story of hope and your story of resilience also that you've shared with us can be a story of power and empowerment. That power within that you just spoke to that can be evoked for somebody else who's maybe listening to this and facing similar situations. So thank you so much for sharing yourself and your story with us and with me. And I'm really looking forward to listening to the next episode of Dope Talks whenever it comes out.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Take care, everybody. Take care, Rahaf.
Take care.